Let us begin. Let us begin. Um, Thank you, everybody, for coming on board. Thank you for joining. I know others will join. There were quite a few people who registered, but let's with load shedding and networks and all that sort of thing, you never know what's going to happen. I see we've got almost a 50-50 split of men and women today, Derek. This is good. But just a welcome to everybody, and I'm going to kick off with the welcome because we have Derek, who's just going to do our host, who's going to do a little bit of a presentation. But I thought before we did that, this is our fourth session. Derek, am I right? Of Men of Value, and we're getting a little bit of momentum. We've had a number of guests that have come on, and we just thought that it would be useful today to reflect, for those of you who've been on the previous sessions, to get a sense of where we are, and that's what our host Derek is going to do. We're basically going to give a little bit of a recap, and that's the one objective of today. And the next objective of today is to really talk about certain call to actions that we want to have. So that's what we're going to do. I'm gonna hand over to our host Derek, and he's going to take us through a couple of slides just to give you a bit of, for those of you who are joining for the first time, a bit of an understanding of what's happened before. And for those of you who've already been on the sessions, a little bit of understanding of, a recall of what's already happened. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for joining, and thank you to the ladies that have joined as well. We call it Men of Value, but ultimately at the end of the day, we really need your input, your sense of what you believe should be the direction and the way forward to make our society, our country, and our world a better place. I'd like to paint a special shout out to everybody who's dialed in from different parts of the world. As we said earlier, we saw Marcus and Alan from the UK, and we've got my sister Nomvuyo from Mauritius, and we've got people from different parts of the country, which we really thank in terms of this technology to be able to do that. Having said that, I'm going to hand over to Derek, and straight after that, in that process, we'll just give you also a sense of how things are going to work. We will have a short presentation as a recap, and then we will have quite a lot of conversation today. We really want to have conversation in terms of certain things that I will talk about straight after Derek has completed. So Derek, my main man, the host, Derek Mzonelli, who's been holding the ship steady, straight over to you, man.
Good day, everybody. I'm just gonna share my screen. I think in these COVID times, we've all learned to accept presentations as is when they come. We've become very we live around tech. So even on a Saturday morning, what you used to say for your session at Gibbs, you now can do on a Saturday. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can. I think you can.
Yes, we can. Let's just open it.
Is it the right view?
No, it just needs to go into the presentation view.
Okay, sorry, something happened here. A sec.
If you go right to the bottom of your screen, right at the bottom.
Yeah, no, it's on my other screen. Trying to swap it.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Okay, this usually works better on Teams. All right, cool. Be it as it may, let's proceed. Okay. You see the screen, obviously, it's the logo of Men of Value. Men of Value, let me see, slideshow. Okay, can you see?
Yeah, it should be probably should come up.
Seconds. Let me try to change things around here. It's a bit.
No, that's fine. You can even proceed like this. It's fine. You can see it.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm really struggling with the tech here today. Okay, we'll proceed like this. Is not as what I'd like, but let's do something a bit. Yeah, there we go. We'll do it like this for now. So, men of value is about intentionally influencing men to heighten their level of self-appreciation and self-development. It's creating men of value. The key word really for us is creating, and I think that's what today is about. It's about continuously creating men of value because it's quite a hairy, audacious goal. My name is Derek Nzaleli. I've had the honor of hosting these sessions. You let me know. You're seeing the.
Yeah, we are.
What are you seeing now?
Yep, we're seeing you're intentionally influencing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then at least one nice session. All right, cool. Well, guys, we've had a few sessions, and one of the things that we've always had in our sessions is to say there's no judging. You're not allowed to sit on your thoughts. So if you just keep that in the back of your mind, to say that if you have something you want to say, the whole idea of men of value is to go out and say it. And we call ourselves men of value because our focus is on men. But it's really not just a gender thing. We are men because we're not women. And there's certain things that happen in being a man. So welcome everybody, and we're very glad that we're joined by so many ladies today. And I think it's an indictment, Vik and everyone who's on here, that if women are interested in hearing this, must mean we're moving in the right direction. So that's great. Our first session, guys, will on the 3rd of October, and Vik, as the founder of Elevate and Value Add, has really decided to himself that his life is really about leadership. But within that life of leadership, he's thought, well, let's make it real. You know what I mean? Let's not leave this to sitting and talking in fancy rooms. Let's make it real. And so there's Men of Value. And from that, then he started off by sharing with us that there's a need. There's a need to have men of value. Look at this. There are 62% of kids born, this was 2018, there was no father on the birth certificate. That number speaks to a need. 87,000 domestic violence cases at the start of lockdown. That speaks to the need. So there's definitely a need to have men of value. We are here defining them. We're working on that. And part of that for any man actually is to regularly analyze their personal balance sheet. You have a personal balance sheet of your own that checks your assets and liabilities, and how do you fare on that score? The other thing is what I had said earlier about transitioning. That's you becoming leaders. We're working towards being leaders at all times, and that is our main focus. To say, let us be leaders, not just at work, where it's probably a bit easier because you have a bit of a better roadmap, but definitely even outside of that. The other people who were in the forum spoke about being consistent in every aspect of your life. That's also very important. And there's also within the forum, people spoke about unity, partnership, teamwork. So the need to say that to be a man of value, you need to be anchored by other men of value that you can tune into. Our second session was on the 14th of November, and there are many takeouts, guys. I'm just trying to talk high level here. And then, of course, with my improvement in tech, I think the next time around we'll actually just use the videos. You can hear hear from the people and stuff. But we had Dr. Dumi Magatlela speak to us. Then we had Chaplain Oscar Madala on the 14th of November. Very, very interesting discussion. And if you look at Dr. Dumi when speaking with us, he's an African skills development practitioner. So in his daily life, he's about making African people who stay in Africa perform better in what they do, obviously from a corporate level. But he then takes it to a next level. And one of the things he was talking about is how important it is to share your knowledge, to share your time, to share your feelings. Again, similar to what had been discussed in the prior session, is there's a need to be real. And in being real, he was specifically speaking about being real to the self. It's hard to be real to others if you haven't decided, okay, well, I'm going to be real to myself. So he spoke on that as well. Know that you are gifted differently. Some are strong here, some are strong there, but whichever. And this, you can imagine when you're young, this is really a big deal. You're not a great soccer player, so now you're not part of the in crowd. You know, the kind of understand that, no, they are different. We all have different goals and things we all do differently. One of the things he spoke about is leaving a soul print. How powerful is that? Leave a soul print. When you've engaged, you spoke with somebody, you actually touch them deep down inside. And a lot of that is what we as men need, something beyond the superficial. Of course, in order to flourish, you should enjoy creating space for others to do so. It's important for men to show up. You know what I mean? Not just to go to your child's soccer game or show, but to genuinely show up. Maybe go along to the physio, hear what the physio is going to say about the soccer. Be part of your child's development. And then local involvement, play within the space that you're in. Now, that was very much a sociological look of things. It was psychological slant. We then went and spoke to Oscar Madala joined, and he was speaking right at the beginning and the end, the hardcore side. He spoke to us about character and how it is you can build your character so that you don't become part of the 238,000 men that are incarcerated versus 4,000 women. Again, is there a need? There's definitely a need for men of value because you can see those numbers talk for themselves. He spoke on how more and more men are being locked up. This is driven by a need to survive quite naturally. But you understand that if every person in South Africa, in order to survive, decided to go steal something, then you'd have a problem. So it's beyond just the need. It's also that some actually go out and do these things. And there's lots of anger for some of the reasons that we mentioned above. My dad's name is not on my birth certificate. Will probably make you a wee bit. So these are dysfunctional families. However, once you've gone that path and ended up in incarceration, there's rehabilitation. So this whole section we can discuss over a few meetings. There's really a lot that's there. But it's very interesting that you look at these two gentlemen. There was one that was really very much about building a great environment. And there's one that was saying, well, if need be, this is where you get corrected. There's a need for boy-child programs, which is partly some of what we do. Quite a lot was done by Craig. I'm coming towards the end, but just I'm also hoping some of you were there. He's a publisher of a couple of books, and he specializes in the dad coach. He spoke about toxic masculinity, and that kind of comes through in the numbers that we saw. It comes through in the other speakers, and it seems to come through every time we meet. Men are seen as toxic by men and definitely by women. So you grow up being taught that a man is wrong, boys are bad people when you're a girl, and all these things. So eventually there's a perception that, well, I look in the mirror, I see a bad person. And we spoke around that and how the term toxic masculinity should actually make us as men upset because that is what we're trying not to be. He spoke about the 6 virtues. I'll just read them. I won't go into detail on them. Champion man. About tending the field. That's being active. Define yourself by your character. Building bond of brothers. And that's what men of value in its essence is about. It's saying, not just talking about it, but knowing it, there's a place to talk. I know that next month around this time or some place in March, there's a point where I can just speak with other men and women around issues. Give something to the next generation is a very important part of being a man, and then making the world a better place. So all those are very interesting. We can always touch on them again. But in summary, this is kind of what came out. Now, obviously, seeing how my slide is on my wrong screen and I couldn't swap it here for whatever reason, this was going to be animated. But even if it's not, really, toxic masculinity comes through almost every time we speak. And part of that is that men do not teach anymore. We don't make sure that we're teaching men to be good men. We don't necessarily get involved. Women do in many cases, and these are generalizations, but these are things we can speak about. So let's chat on it. Violence against women is not tolerated in any circumstance by men of value, under any circumstance by men of value. Partnerships is what it's all about today in this space where we can speak. And being the best version of you. Hopefully just by attending, you're starting to move in that direction. And then the importance of character, something that even I need to work a lot on, being a consistent, same person across the board and anytime you see me. It's very hard, but that is really the stuff we've spoken about. So as not to take up all of our time, I'm going to hand over to Vik, who, with this as the backdrop, what we've done, what we're doing, what we're going to hopefully continue to do, I think it's definitely shown there's a huge need for men of value. I think each of us who are here are doing our bits, and there are many other organizations and groups all around South Africa, and you can see the people from outside the country, all around the world doing activities to make men good, or to up the ante in terms of the value of being a man. So Vik is going to speak more around action points. So over to you, Vik.
Thanks, my man. Thanks. Maybe if you can stop sharing, and then I'll dive into a couple of things. Thanks, and thanks to everybody else who's just joined. Thank you, Derek. And Derek was just, that was just a recap and a very important recap of what's happened over the last 3 sessions. And thanks for that, Derek. And I think just going back to the point that we made earlier on, what our objectives are is to have conversation, i.e. bring in guests, expertise in some of the subjects that we're discussing, but also for us in this group to start, and the main aim here is to start looking at a call to action. One of the things I was actually saying to Craig not too long ago is that there is no man movement. There has not been a hashtag man movement that has gained sufficient momentum, both within the context of our country and anywhere else, actually, to give credence to change. When you look at Black Lives Matter, when you look at the Me Too movement internationally, when you look locally at Fees Must Fall, and even to the extent that the men are trash hashtag has superseded any other hashtag that men who to create positivity has not been there. So what does this mean? I think it means that what we'd like to do in these processes is to have a discussion with guests over a topic, and then to reflect and to use the reflection such as today, which we are all going to engage in, as a mechanisms for call to action. So just on that point on why is there no man movement, I like people to think about that as a question to take forward, and maybe there will be some suggestions to that. Rafil, who's one of our hosts celebrating women, just sent me a text. Sorry, I was actually on the phone looking at that WhatsApp. And it's really a heartbreaking WhatsApp, in terms of, and it's a little bit, gruesome in terms of its pictures, but, the ending here, is just so this before the call started, it's currently trending #1, but there's a statement here from a man that actually says that when he sees pictures like this, he finds it difficult to even accept himself as a man. And that becomes a major problem, because that's the conversation that Craig was talking about. And I'd like us also in the question to start actually assessing what is this construct of a man. And Craig put it, what's happened with toxic masculinity is that it's missed the point of masculinity. And what is masculinity about? And he names these points. He says masculinity is to protect. the physiological structures of a man are there to protect. That's what the role of masculinity is. It's supposed to provide, right? It's supposed to serve, masculinity. It's supposed to love, right? And as importantly, it's supposed to honor. That's what a man's role is. That's what a man's supposed to be doing. Anything else outside that, that doesn't add to this, is not really, the auspices of what men should be doing. So for men and young boys to be discouraged from expressing who they are as men and boys as we move forward, is that a positive thing? And what's that going to actually end up resulting into the future if they don't understand what their role is in society? So that's another point I'd like us to talk about. Another point I'd like us to talk about is the glossary of action points. Now, we don't have to make this complicated. Derek said something to me that really, has stuck to me, and I said, shucks, this is, just to express it that way is simple enough, but so powerful. And he said that after Bra Oscar's conversation about 280,000 men in prison, what does this mean for the young boy who doesn't get validation from masculinity, who doesn't get validation from a man, a boy who's never heard "I love you" from a man, a boy who's never had been hugged by a man, and a boy who actually has not had a man pitch up to their sports day, to their sports event, and say, yay, go for it, well done, or unlucky, next time. What does that do? And that's another thing I'd like us to converse about in terms of what role can we play on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not necessarily meaning in the nucleus of your family, because if you're a man and you're hugging your sons and daughters, that's great. But there are, 62% of birth certificates did not have a male figure on it. So there's a lot of boys out there needing something as simple as a hug, something as being told and validated that this is good. That for me became a powerful action point in terms of ensuring that that takes place. And the other thing that I'd like us to talk about is the possibility of developing satellite processes. This is great. We've got 23. We get up to about 30 people on here, but generally a group is about 10 or 15 where you can have constructive debate and constructive change. These events are wonderful that we'll have monthly to ensure that we all come together and put a few cents of what we've done together. But I am actually thinking in terms of how we move call to action forward, is creating satellite groups of men and women, obviously, and also ensuring that that communication gets spread through and the action points get sent through. Craig Wilkinson, who was our last guest, said there are action points that he's created that men should be partaking in terms of the simplicity of things like mentoring and the simplicity of things like coaching, but it's just not happening. And he was asking me why, and I said, well, I think there needs to be a designed program that takes us through these courses that you've put together, as opposed to leaving it to the assumption that we are all going to do it, and we're guilty of utilizing other things that need to take up our time over this. But if we can structure this in a more efficient way, then we'll probably get a little bit more momentum in terms of moving forward. And then the last point I'd like to make, and then we can open it up to discussion and to over these points, is the need to extend ourselves beyond social media. Right now, we're restricted in more ways than one because of our current situation, but where we need to be at is really at the grassroots levels. Where we need to be at is within the constructs of where men are that are not necessarily of our neighbors next door. We need to be going to have conversations with them to give them a perspective of who they are and what their role and responsibility in society. Back in the day, I mean, when I was growing up, the idea of men not protecting children is unheard of. I mean, it baffles my mind that we can not only withdraw ourselves as men from the role and function of protecting children and, of course, protecting women, and that we're now getting to the point where it's okay to have your buddy be somebody who we know are who's not participating in society correctly, and yet we don't call them out. And I think we need to have that level of conversation in more detail and build up that momentum. The how, well, they know one answer, and I certainly don't have them, and hence the need for the conversation. So I'd like to open this up to discussion. And again, just as a reminder, you know, the key points are really, how do we ignite a call to action? What are the things, as we say, we want to put in the glossary of men of value of behaviors? Certainly, if in a month you have not hugged a man and told them that, validated them, told them that you love them, start with your kids if it's not happening there, because that's important. But further down the line, your nephews, your nieces, your cousins, your whatever, you know, the family extension or community extension. I think we have a responsibility to be proactive and to be doing those kind of things. What are the glossary of things that men should be doing that we can start jotting down and call them the tools of men of value in terms of that? And then how do we create a movement? I'm not interested in a big hashtag movement, but what I am interested in is ensuring that what we're doing here is also happening in different parts of the country. How do we consider that? Consider that process. So, Derek,
Yes.
we may get volunteers who speak, or you may have to introduce the refillware process. And the refillware process is we point at you and look at you and go, how about you saying something? So, how do
Lina is said here in the chat, we have to change our mindset, especially as a society in South Africa and the world. The emancipation of women should be seen in practice. Men will always think they are superior than women. Just look at the presidents of the world and the positions led by men in churches. There must be a political will to allow capable women to lead in the entire world. A girl child must also be brought on board, and we really appreciate that the topic has allowed women to participate. Excellent.
Yeah, and I'll answer that once we get a couple. Once we get a couple of other elements. And who did that come from? Sorry.
Glina. That was Glina.
Oh, Glina. Okay.
So, sorting out the corporate side, sorting out societal in general, involving the girl child as well. Is there anyone who'd like to comment? I mean, I've spoke for quite a while. Vik spoke for quite a while.
Over to you.
We're probably going to say the most important rule is do not sit on your thoughts. So whether you think it's a great thought, it's an innovative thought, it's been spoken about before, it's completely irrelevant. Just go out and say, here's what I think. And let these Saturday morning sessions be where you just say, here's what I think, and go in any direction you like. Is there anyone who'd like to add anything?
Andrew's going to add something. Mr. Andrew Apani.
Andrew, go ahead.
Mr. Apani, can you add something?
You're on mute there, Andrew.
Good morning, Vik. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning, Andrew.
How are you doing?
Have I put you on the spot?
I really want to just give a little comment, especially on the impact of me, myself, trying to be a man of, of value. I mean, this session, the second session and the last session was very powerful, and I still love the way it was summarized by Derek. It's not easy to become. There's so many challenges, but what came out in help us to become better people, which is the most critical part. I mean, we take some other things for granted, and whereas our family, they value that. So we end up valuing what is not really important for the family and ignoring what is really important for the family. I mean, giving examples like time, giving examples, the way we speak to our partners, you know, those are the most critical things that make us better people. I mean, we just had this week event here at home where me and my daughter was sick, and I tried to bring some medicine for her, and we didn't see things the same, and we had a bit of argument, but that's not such a argument. The worry there was the way I expressed my discomfort with her not taking medication to her was hurting her, and dealing with a teen, it was a difficult thing. Then we had to get an intervener, which was my wife, to come and help and say, no, you know what? Sometimes the way you have put it, she didn't take it well, you know. But just go and apologize with her. That will make a lot of meaning to her, and then sort of also build up and heal quickly with her. And then tomorrow when she goes to school, she'll be performing. You know, it's just a simple thing. And as a father, you ask, how should I apologize to my own daughter? You understand? You take it easier, but the impact becomes so big that it creates a negativity. And remember, we as fathers, we are what our daughters want to marry. So, you know, you want to create that, to say, this is a safe space for you. And then it really helps me. And, you know, it's one of these little things that we discuss here that it helps us and build us and to become men of value. And I would like to really, I appreciate it, guys. And every time I'm improving, you know, growing up from a village and coming to a city is not easier. but thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I will keep doing better and bettering myself, and always going back to my drawing back and check and correct where I go wrong. I thank you.
Excellent, excellent, Andrew. I mean, we probably can end right there. I think you've said it all. You're intervening proactively as a man at home. Things went belly up for reasons we wouldn't quite know. You salvaged it through communication with other people in the family, and you actually didn't even apologize. And you know, apologizing is a very, very, in fact, we need to find a good word for apologizing, because that's something that you need to do earnestly and do quite regularly, and leave the people you're apologizing to understanding that it comes from a place of meaning. You know what I mean? That you've really meant it. And you'll know that a lot of times when relationships go south, you forgot to apologize. It might have been 5 years ago, it might have been 10 years ago, it might have been 15 years ago, but that lack of apology 15 years ago might still be needed today. So excellent, excellent, Andrew. I'm glad to see that you're seeing value in the sessions. Vik, there's a few more things that came in, second point in the chat, just linked to what the earlier message was. I think part of the problem is that the traits we finally identifying as toxic masculinity are the traits that have always been rewarded with success. So the behaviors that are being awarded and considered successful are themselves toxic. Very profound. That was from KG. So I guess it speaks to what is the measurement of a man, what is the measurement of success, and how do we then tone that in such a way that it's no longer putting down women or putting men in a bad light. So that's the second question there, Vik, when you get to it.
Yeah. So and I think let's maybe take is there anybody else? I'd like, you know, I love the chat, and I want to say, Andrew, thank you for that. I'm a big proponent now, having just finished Brené Brown's book on courageous vulnerability. And courageous vulnerability is exactly what you exhibited. And people don't learn until they're able to be on the edge of courageous vulnerability, i.e., saying something that generally you wouldn't want to say, but doing it in a manner that people can hear, feel, and appreciate, that comes from the part of sincerity that one can't always see. So thank you for that. Very, very, very moving. And then let's take a few more conversations, and then we'll add to this.
There's a comment here, Vik, from Katleho, very interesting. It says, perhaps I am different in my regard. Men do need spaces where they can meet by themselves, and spaces where they can share their darkness and light, so as to encourage whatever growth and change is necessary. For me, yeah, so that's pretty much his point, to say there needs to be space and times where men just speak as men. So you can comment on that as well.
And Derek, sorry, then the message continues just after KG's message. The questions continue.
You're on mute, my man. Derek, you're on mute.
There's a further discussion. How does our concept of manhood differ in terms of socioeconomic standing, which we have discussed and will always be discussing, because that plays a big role. I mean, if you're not hungry, you might behave a bit better than someone who's starving. Also, the question of spirituality as anchor of manhood, that always comes up. And then there's also, and finally, to get rid of manhood that is defined by women or money. Providence is not our main task, but rather taking care of what God has provided for us. Who was speaking earlier? I mean, maybe we can just say some of the points that you'd like to discuss.
Does anyone want to? Yeah. Does anyone want to?
Yeah, there was someone who was speaking, because we're great. We're getting quite a few comments now, but it usually works out a bit easier if we just speak to them. Katleho, go ahead.
Hi guys, thank you so much. It's my first time here. I just wanted to perhaps substantiate a little bit on what I was saying, in that, for instance, I wanted to ask the Department of Community Safety here in Gauteng to allow us to actually go in with a couple of organizations that I work with, and to actually speak to perpetrators of GBV, and to hear what led them to this, but in an environment where they can feel like it's not that we condone it, but it's okay to say, this is why I hit my partner, this is why I killed my partner, so that we address those causes there. But secondly, also, I feel like it might be important for us as men to have a kind of manhood that women don't define for us, but rather that we define for ourselves. And this is not exclusionary in any way, but I think that our enlightenment, quote unquote, has taken away very valuable things. I mean, initiation school, for instance, very backward in our minds, but those were places where manhood was imbibed from an older generation to a younger one. I mean, yes, and my perspective is informed by a biblical argument. If Jesus needed to hear his father say, this is my son, in whom I'm well pleased, who are we as men not to need that? So it's just one of those things that we need men together around to be able to share their darkness, but in a space that does not say this and this and this is off the table. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Absolutely, Katleho. I think this is why I kind of, and I know I've gone on about this many times, and thanks for speaking, Katleho. The importance of just communicating so that things are fluid and liquid, so that things are fluid. One of the reasons I'm always harping on this point of please speak, unmute, say what you're sitting on, say what you're thinking. It's just that, is that we really need to communicate. And this must be a place, like I said earlier, where you can say absolutely anything. So we are mixed gender now, but there shouldn't be any reason why there's something you cannot say. And definitely we're going to speak more about the men-only question that was raised earlier. So excellent. No, I think those are great points, valid.
So yeah, so I mean, and thank you for that. And all this really enriches men of value as we grow and as we want to continue to grow, to look at perspectives that really latch on to the principles of us ultimately at the end of the day heightening our intentionality of looking into how we contribute and how we participate and who we are in society. And there's never one solution to this. The only ultimate objective at the end of the day, when we can tick the box, regardless of how we got to the box, is that, is this for society? Who we define ourselves to be, who we want to be, who we think we are, is this for the benefit of overall society? Will our children look at that definition and look at that construct and look at that behavior and say, yes, this actually does improve me? Will our will women and the mothers and the grandmothers of our society look at that and say, yes, this actually enhances and contributes to that? So how we get there, I think, is a amorphous of different ways, which is why I actually said that, how do we then define splitting up into satellite groups, and what do those satellite groups look like, and where do we engage in the different aspects of some of the needs that we may have that might define that process in terms of how we get there. This is not something that started yesterday, so it's certainly not something that's going to be solved tomorrow. I just want to touch on two things, and then there's so many things here, but so that more people can speak whilst we have the rest of the half an hour. We have, for the girl child earlier statement, we do have a celebrating as value add celebrating women event. It runs monthly. And that is hosted by Refilwe, who's here as well. And the whole objective there is to listen to, as we listen here, and the ladies and the mums who've joined us, who are listening, we listen in there. And I did say that the first time we hosted that, it was the first time as a man I listened. I didn't assume I knew. I listened to the voices of women who were speaking to talk about their journey in our world and how that has been, and what role we have played to either improve that or absolutely not improve it. And without going in with the assumption of thinking you knew because you've heard it enough times, you did not know, and I did not know. It was a very emotional moment for me to say it really is something important to listen. So we do have the women, and we are looking at, in the same way as we're looking at a program for young, for men and boys, we're looking for a program for the girl child, for the lady, for the woman, for the mum, for those who can pass on such vital wisdom to them. Please, more comments, and then I'm summarizing a couple of things here that I'd like to talk about at the end, but I really want to hear more from yourself. Is there anybody?
If I could add to what you were saying there, Vik, I think it's great that there's a session like this that's titled for men. Hello?
Derek?
Yes, hi. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Derek, just a quick one, actually. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
It's KG.
Yes, KG. Go.
The quick one is, one thing that has really been concerning me for years is the language. The real deal here is, have you heard how people talk to, let me say us as men, how do we talk to women? And it's normalized. There's actually nothing wrong with that. And I've always said to people, it moves from words to action
as in beating up someone else, than actually eventually killing them. But one of the things that we're not doing as society, and actually I remember growing up, I had so many grannies. I mean, you wouldn't just use foul language and it's okay. But those days, it's even formal to a point that you even hear this language in the boardroom, you know, because perhaps maybe Vikela is the CEO of a company. When he's going through a rough patch, he could just, you know, use the French in the boardroom, and it's okay. You know, in as much as, you know, men would actually be conversing with women, and they use the foul language, it's okay. So I think one of the things that we lost from who we are as Africans, basically, it's trying to formalize the language out of respect, so that eventually, when you speak, you know, one is able to actually tell about your emotions, because indeed we start with words, and then we move with our hands to beat them out, and eventually we kill them. But you will realize that if you analyze those words, they've always had the potential to kill someone.
Yeah, powerful, KG. Powerful. I've actually written, I'll explain what I've written down towards the end.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here, I'm going to prove that here you say absolutely any word you want. One of the most common words you hear in corporate is the word cuck. A person can say it anywhere, anytime. In fact, it's almost not a swear word. It's almost not a swear word. And in culture, you get situations where words that are vulgar said to the wrong person at the wrong time can really be insulting. Yet you can sit in a boardroom and hear somebody say, hey, you're talking cock. Sometimes say it jokingly, sometimes say it seriously, but again, very much to your point, KG, you're using words like cuck in that kind of environment demeans the entire situation you're around. I mean, I spent my early days working in the retail space. Every other word was a swear word. It was just one swear word. It's just the culture. But of course, what that does is inevitably it brings down the level of mutual respect in any engagement. I mean, you might pick it up slightly from an accent. I grew up in the States for quite a bit of my academic years. Probably the most common swear word besides the F word there is motherfucker. Everything's a motherfucker. When you say it positively, you say it negatively, that word is used all the time. So because we're at men of value, you can say absolutely everything you want. Even if you wanted to say something like, and say, well, the word motherfucker is a problem, the word cuck is a problem, go out, feel free to say it. This is an environment where we say it. We're creating a glossary of words. And in that glossary, we're gonna have to find a general meaning to cover not saying words like that become demeaning and then become realized to the negative, to the detriment of society.
Yep.
You want to say something?
No, I want to hear anybody else. Please. This is good, and I'll tell you why it's good as we get to the end. The glossary is growing. Hey, colleagues.
Yeah, so tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and there's going to be winter coming and all of those things. Something that I'd like to highlight that we joke about, it's type of memes that will be sent around. For example, around Valentine's, women are always portrayed as, we're just after your monies, you're going to be spending and spending and spending on us. And then when winter comes, you see the post that you sent, the winter stock and all of those things. So those are the things that I would like men to be aware of that. You know, I've got male friends, and some of them will send me these things, and I would wonder that, does my male friend think really this is really funny? You know, so there's certain things that my male friends will send to me, and I will never forward them to anyone else, because I don't take kindly to some of the things that you think are funny about females. So that's something that I would like to be sensitized to, that be careful of the things that you circulate around and making us be seen as all we are is just to be used like that. Thank you.
Very
nice one, Goli. Nice one. Makes me reflect a little bit deeply.
I mean, I'm in the media space in my day job. And one of the biggest challenges is determining attribution. So when something is successful or communication is successful, where did it happen? And what you found now is there's such freedom in communication. People say anything, anywhere, anyhow. So unless a brand is guarding itself as a brand, it sometimes doesn't bother to stop something being said. I mean, in the Premier Soccer League, there was a lot of, for those who watch English soccer, there's a lot of racist comments that were coming out. And very much like your point, Tony, where because you're in social media, you say whatever, whenever, however, and not be accountable. So I think part of being a man of value and is really saying, well, did I receive this? Did I forward that? Is it in line with the level of respect that we're trying to inculcate? Very, very interesting, Chloe. Very interesting. And I use myself even as an example because I know the things that we speak about are things that I'm guilty of. And I think that's why this session is important. It's not hairy, fairy, pie in the sky. You must be perfect. That's for a different forum. So we're not a church by any means. We are really trying to mix a whole lot of thinking and different people to create a common understanding.
I think this also talks to the point of rewarding toxicity. I think it was a statement made earlier that the masculinity toxicity is rewarded. And that's exactly what Claudia says. We laugh at jokes and sometimes we're not conscious, and we need to start being conscious about some of the things we do. Tshepo, you wanted to say something?
Hi guys, absolutely. I agree with what Goli said. People tend to joke about really sensitive issues. I remember on Twitter, some guy made a rape joke and I shut it down. I was like, you know what, that's not cool. And then we stopped talking after that. And then he reached out and asked why I wasn't talking to him anymore, why I cut him off. I'm like, you can't joke about things like that. Like, rape is a very serious issue. And he thought I was overreacting because I cut him off when he was making jokes like that. And I think you realize that we let so many things slide as people or as women or as men, and it becomes the norm. And it's very, very difficult to change a person's perspective because, hey, that was just a joke. It wasn't that deep. No, it was deep. So many people have been raped. So many people go through such horrible things that they're not ready to talk about because you're going to turn it into a joke. It's not a joke. Yeah, that's all.
1 second. Nice one.
Powerful.
Reho, I think Reho's got a hand up.
Yeah, Reho.
Okay. Hi, thank you. This is my first session here, and thank you. It's very valuable. I think what you said, Vik and Derek, in the beginning was that you need to create a movement that is powerful, that will create a societal change into the way men view women, or defining masculinity. I put in my comments there that it has to start from foundation stage.
Yes.
Because we can talk all we want, you know, until we are blue in the face. I mean, you realize these things, you know, like the way masculinity is taking to a different direction. It's happening all over the world. It's not just South Africans who are experiencing it. I'm watching a series on Netflix, Firefly Lane. I mean, it was shot in the US. And this is about teenage girls. It's all about friendship and teenage girls. And it actually pans out their lives from when they grew up to, you know, when they are now women and working in their different careers. And one of the girls, you know, it's two friends. One of the friends in high school got raped when she went out with a guy friend to a party, and she thought it was an innocent thing, and you know, got a couple of drinks and whatever. So if we start this type of education or type of culture so that it becomes the norm. I mean, we have churches that has men conferences, but you catch it late because at a church, you decide that, okay, I'm going to attend a men's conference because, you know, spiritually I'm mature. I can make a decision that, okay, these things are important to me, but possibly it's men in their 30s and 40s, and you know, it's a bit late. What about our children? What about our boy child? You know, so if you look at prisons, like you actually mapped out the statistics there, that the most of the boys or of the people in prisons are young. They are very young. It's because they're lost, they have no fathers, their mothers are working, or we are working, you know, to be honest, we are working, you know, we have to work and make sure that our children eat, you know. So it starts at a foundation phase. Also prisons, you know, those prisons, it's like you know, they do a lot of rehab, you know, trying to develop prisoners so that when they get out of there, they can fit into society. You know, how is it that this becomes a regular curriculum into prisons, that, you know, they are adopted, and once a week, you know, they get there, someone goes in, it actually moves away from social media. It's now a physical thing where they can listen, you know, and adopt this, and they can come out of there as changed persons, you know. So it's both ways, men and women, because, you know, sometimes as women, we think, no, this is innocent. But whereas we think, you know what, I'm actually leading this person on, and I don't even know what their barriers are. So if I go to this extent, you know, or let me not even get to the extent, because I do not know how they were raised and how is it that they will react. So let me not provoke anyone, because sometimes we say that, why is it that because I'm wearing this, I'm exposing myself, that I'm provoking people? We do have rights to be whatever. I mean, our constitution gave us this right, but let us not go to that. Let us be conscious as women that let's not do that, because we do not know how far the people or the environment that we are in is going to let someone react differently. So until we are at that level, until we are at a maturity, and it's generations, maybe a second or third generation, then we can be free and say, you know what, we are all free. Everyone is mature. Everyone has gone through that cultivating, that they understand, you know, that women are to be respected, and men also understand, you know, how is it they're supposed to treat women. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Rachel. No, very, very valid points. I mean, I think that you can never, ever start early enough, especially because so many children don't grow up in a nuclear family. You know what I mean? It's either I grew up with my dad, grew up with my mom, and many, many cases I grew up with my grandmother. And that's what you hear, especially, I mean, with very much people of color, and you find the typical or the strongest family type is not really there. But that being said, you still have to find a way. And I think you're very right in saying, I mean, even when Oscar was speaking with us, he was saying part of the reason there's so many people in incarceration is that there was nothing done early. And I think that's why among the action items, when it's find that young child who needs male influence in their life, give them a hug. How many people in prison might jump away from you if you were to give them a hug, because it'll just be, this is so strange. This is crazy. Why on earth am I being hugged? Might even take something and stab you. Because when they were kids, that is not how human beings associate. And you're very right, Rachel, 120%. I mean, you said a mouthful. Getting that done would really be difficult. But it's interesting, Tina added a point here, which is closer towards now on things such as incarceration. There must also be laws in place that must really explain who and when, who has the right to have a child. Government currently is having a heavy burden of supporting children who have no fathers on their birth certificates. They must be done in line with the constitution of our country. Wow, very interesting. Very interesting, very radical. But it speaks to a word you might want to call accountability. And I think Craig touched on this, and Dr. Dumi very much, not just accountability, but being proud enough in being a man that you don't need the rules. But it goes without saying that laws, in my personal opinion, Glenn, I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's just one too many men, or far too many men, who are willing to have children and leave it on a, we'll see how it goes. If I get along with the mom, I'll see the child. If I can afford to take care of it, I'll take care of the child. If I feel I'm not ready, I'll just ignore the child forever. I mean, that just can't be allowed. Our laws are doing what they can, but I think a big part of being men of value, and I even wrote the word down here, is owning fatherhood. 62% of children are sitting with birth certificates that have no father's name there. Who knows which surname they took on and what views are on the surname, but you're thinking, that's a very complicated situation in every sense of the word. And to go to that person and say, have a lot of self-esteem and value, and meanwhile they know that culturally, this is my surname and that should be my father, but he disappeared into the woodwork and it's all fine, we can survive without him. Wow, very interesting, Tina. I couldn't agree more. I think the law needs to do much, much more around saying, be accountable. Because when somebody breaks into your house today, jumps over the roof, goes into the wall and steals whatever, shoots whoever, they have a father. There's a father. Somebody brought that child on earth. And what has the father done? Because if they were younger, you'd go to the father and say, hey, your child is misbehaving. What has the father done? Interesting, Tina.
No, absolutely. I think that's let's take maybe one or two more points, and then I think I'd like to summarize on that. Marcus,
Vik, good.
All the way from London.
Yes.
I like the.
I couldn't find my wave hand. Good morning. I think it's good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling from the UK. I mean, clearly there are some similarities with the UK, but it's very, very different. So the only thing I'd like to sort of add to is the issue of self-esteem. We're in a minority population in the United Kingdom, people of color. And I work in a primary school, and the issue for me with our young black boys who, unfortunately, their trajectory in the UK, they are criminalized at the drop of a hat, and it all reverts back to self-esteem. So these are African Caribbean boys, these are boys where their parents are from Nigeria, the diaspora. So we have our challenges as well, but it's somewhat slightly different to South Africa because we're in a minority population and racism is one of our biggest bugbears. So what you're doing, I think, is really, really good in terms of showing love and care to young people, especially young men. It's incredibly important, incredibly important. And that's something I do in my day-to-day life. I hug my sons and I tell them that I love them. And what you see in some of our schools is many black boys, young men that don't know their fathers. So it's a similar scenario, but in many respects it's different, but it's kind of more concentrated because we're a minority population and we're victim to the criminal justice system, overt subliminal racism and so forth. So what you're doing is really good. And I found today's session quite interesting.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I know we thank you, Marcus, and actually, you know, I was just going to say that it is different, but you know, very much the same because you know our criminal justice system here. Oscar unfortunately couldn't make it today. He did the presentation on the criminal justice system here in terms of the impact on and more so on a class basis. You know, we know in South Africa that there's what we call white collar crime that goes completely and totally overlooked, and yet somebody stealing a cell phone can be serving up to 5 years. So we really need to overhaul quite a few things. Unless there's one more very last one, I want us to, you know, I just want to summarize a couple of things that I've heard that I think without maybe you realizing you've started creating a glossary and by Alan, that's my brother. I cannot not let him speak. That will get me in trouble.
I just want to make a just a very quick point about people and how they understand their own emotions. I just inadvertently started learning about psychology and what it means to try and interpret my own emotions in scenarios where, you know, sometimes someone would say something, or there'd be a scenario where I would feel inadequate, and I would wonder why I would feel angry or resentful to things which may not necessarily come out from the perpetrator as being intended to make me feel angry or resentful. And then I went into this journey of trying to understand why human emotions come up. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is, until we help other people understand why they might feel strong emotions in certain scenarios, then only once they start to understand these things, they can then get control of them. And so you might find that there's a situation where someone has maybe a fender bender, and it might be the other driver's fault, but they didn't really mean it. So how you might approach that scenario in the moment, you might come out your car and be really angry, and then it all explodes, and then you have drama. Or you might come out and you say, okay, you bashed my car. I appreciate you didn't really mean it, but we need to deal with the scenario. So you can have two very different outcomes from the same scenario. So I just think what I find with maybe people who have inadvertently in society got to a point where they're on the wrong side of the law. Why did they steal that mobile phone? It's not maybe because they want it or they need to sell it. Maybe they just wanted the some kind of association with having some item of value. So it's not a financial thing, it's more a social thing. You know, how can I show in front of my friends? So that is a very basic example. I just think there's not enough emphasis in schools and our education system, which says to people, how can you understand your emotions when you're in different scenarios? And then by understanding those, how can you deal with them? So,
no, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Alan. Thanks very much. Absolutely. And it's actually leads to the couple of things that I wanted to mention. The one is we are, you know, certainly going to create smaller splinter groups of this, because once a month for an hour and 15 minutes, as you can see, is just not enough time. And we can go on for the next 2 hours and we'll all still be on the call. So we really want to create that ability to engage and start really diagnosing these. And those programs we'll certainly let you know about as we progress. It's important that that we, you know, this thing of, you know, how many will it take for change to happen? Well, from a mental point of view, 27 of us have already changed. We've created this, and it's the sphere of influence in terms of how we start making the decisions as to how we behave and how we see things consistently from this point onwards. That's going to make a difference. And one of the big things that Derek used is this thing called accountability. Accountability is a big thing for me because I'm co-conspirator to you know, behaviors or to seeing things that one didn't speak out to, or one didn't confront, or one didn't do exactly what, you know, Chloe is saying and say, or Tseko is saying and say, hey, you can't do this. By the way, if you continue to do this, we're done. And that's the level of holding to account we need to have of others, and hopefully they will start beginning to hold themselves to account in terms of, as a result of that, in terms of how they see the perspective of the people that are around them. So I just want to quickly talk about the glossary that I have put together, and it's a suggested glossary, and we will send this to everybody that's been here before the next one. And I think it's us holding ourselves to account too, to make sure that we keep to these sort of elements that we've agreed on, and we will reiterate them throughout the year. We'll continue to bring them up, we'll continue to add more to them, and they'll become the language that we talk to. And I can't remember who said what and used the word very specifically. And by the way, this is going to take a lot of vulnerability. It's going to take a tremendous amount of courage. I'm even thinking about them from my own personal context. because I'm not very good at some of these things. But you know, one can't be appearing here and trying to move and create some level of momentum if one isn't actually seriously digesting this and making it part of the behavior. The first one I'd like to bring out as something that was said here and I thought was powerful, and they may sound simplistic, but they're not easy. And that's this thing called apologizing. When we look at the balance sheet of us, as particularly now I'm talking to the men, how often do we apologize? And that needs to be something that sits within your balance sheet, where you can get to a behavioral comfort of saying, yeah, I do apologize. And by the way, this is not apologizing just when you're wrong. This is apologizing in the context of a couple of things that were mentioned in terms of how I said what I said, or what I sent, or what I saw, or how I behaved. And it would be hard pressed for you to go through a whole month where you can put your hand up and say, there's nothing I needed to apologize for. Apology, I think, is a powerful tool that as men we need to start ingraining in ourselves and just ask ourselves a question. How often? I can't remember the last time I apologized. And is an apology needed? And I'm not talking about the fumbly mumbly, let me hug you, hold you, or it really is sit down and I need to express an apology. And I'd like to add that to the glossary of conversations when we move on, when we ask ourselves how are we intentionally becoming men of value, and I think that'll help. The second one is the one I mentioned earlier, hug. It would be hard pressed for us to go through a whole month where we haven't found somebody of significance to us who's male that we hug and we validate them. It would also be hard pressed for us to go through a whole month where we haven't hugged somebody and said we love you. And I really say that as men, that should be a grocery of behavior that if we're not doing, we intentionally change, and if we are doing, we amplify as much as possible. The other one was communicate and how we communicate. Again, I need to hold my hand up. We need to be conscious and clear about how we communicate. And out of that, there's a lot of different elements of communication. And again, it would be hard pressed for us to say that our communication is 100% all the time. What kind of language do we use? And exactly what Alan is saying. How do we respond and how do we react to situations and environments? Do we pause? Do we breathe? Do we think about it? And again, it's about going away and saying, well, what are my communication capabilities? What does heighten my level of response in certain occasions? And usually, sometimes raising the voice more than anything else, or whatever it is. I think it is important to understand both the physical communication in terms of and the verbal communication that is there. Oh yes, Maria was talking about COVID. Be careful. I really am. I really am talking about people that within your vicinity. I'm not saying just go out and hug everybody, but I am talking about. You're right, my sister. You're absolutely right. Within the vicinity of the protocols that are there. The other thing I'd like us to reflect on as men, and it was mentioned earlier, is this construct of spirituality and understanding the spirituality in the context of who we are culturally. And I think we don't spend enough time reflecting as to how do we express these elements in terms of truly appreciating what defined our manhood in certain cultural contexts and our spiritual context. And the exact example that was given around boys going in to them in, you know, and being circumcised as a traditional practice. The Jewish community do it, and nobody bats an eyelid. Their bar mitzvahs when they're 13 and they're 16. They have traditional cultural processes of defining certain things. And then they also have a very powerful religion that they follow. How do we as a man, and I think it's something that we need to internalize and spend time digesting as to saying, how does that express itself in the other elements? And I've talked about love. And then the last one was language. I think the word language was used. I'm hard pressed. Language is what comes out of your mouth and how you say it and when you say it and the things that are used consistently is very important for us to get right. So we're going to create this as a glossary of what we believe adds value as men to society, and we're going to work on it. We'll add to it, take away to it. We'll certainly add to it, but we'll measure it. This is just a few things that I've pulled out from some of the conversations that are really going to be of significance, I think, and when we start, we're just going to spend 5 minutes saying, apologize, communicate. What's your language? Hug, love. And I want to end off by saying this. I grew up with a sense of one of the prime functions and the primal instincts of masculinity as a man is to protect. I remember vividly watching when the Titanic sank and reading the books about the Titanic, that with the shortage of lifeboats that were on the Titanic on its maiden voyage, the only people who were allowed to get onto the lifeboats first were men and children. And were women and children. And the reason why I'm expressing this construct of protection is because as men, if we don't take the accountability of protecting the rights of women, the rights of children, if we don't fight for those extensively and yet we denigrate them, then I think we're not going to be able to move into society the way we should. So that's me. And I'd like to, hand over to Derek just to thank you very much for attending. And we will send this out to everybody that's here. And I think we've got what I would like to have gotten out of today, which was call of action. What are the calls to action? And then we will talk about a few more of those as we move forward. Thank you very much. And thank you for all taking the time out on a Saturday morning.
Excellent. Thanks, Vic. Thanks for everyone who participated. Guys, the chats, wow, there's so much being said here. I mean, we could go into another session just to speak around the chats. That's really appreciative. And I think everyone, I would imagine, would have looked at and engaged with the chats on their own. If I could, however, please encourage that we speak. It just makes it a bit easier than having to try to read. So having a comment there's nothing wrong, it's great. But to interject, come in, and we can just make it live and much more interactive. Because to go between the two sometimes get tricky. I mean, there must be quite a few points that some of us haven't even seen here for listening, or if you were reading here, something you didn't hear. So if I could please encourage everyone to unmute. Maybe next time we have a session where you don't mute. And everyone is just coming and is saying they will hear your thoughts. Obviously, you don't want to make it uncomfortable, but guys, we cannot reiterate the importance of speaking. Let's communicate. And but great to see that the chat is still alive. I think in closing, guys, I think just by attending here, you've done a few of the action things, because attending and being involved in a group is, by anyone you speak to, important. So we're definitely taking action in that sense. The other action I want to suggest to everybody, because that we sign a pledge, especially the men, and that pledge is a very obvious one, that we shall never in any way, shape, or form abuse women or children. That is a pledge. Now, it's not that, why would you sign that? Because it's nonsensical. I don't do that anyway. We'll sign it because we're that serious about it. Probably the one thing in men of value that is not tolerated under any circumstance is abuse of women and children. That has to be the framework. But then we don't speak about it every day because it's so obvious. It's so obvious, it's almost like breathing itself. But I think, Vic, we might want to add on there that in our action step, we're signing this pledge, not because you're guilty of or whatever, but you may have been in your past, who knows, and who knows what happens when you're upset. But in this forum, within this group, absolutely under no circumstance would that happen. I say this as a father of 2 daughters, as sisters, and I cannot say the side of Derek you'll see when you were to beat up my sisters, as simple as that. But violence is not the way to go, but I'm just saying, let's speak about the obvious as well. So there are 2 simple action points. Thank you everyone so much for joining. We will set up other sessions. I think Vic did speak to the fact that we will break things up a bit. We don't want to make this a full-time job by any means, but we probably can't make it so laid back that you just tune in every once a month and you hear, which is also fine if that's where you choose how you want to engage. But obviously, like most things in life, it takes some time. Here it took data, it took your time on a Saturday. You know, there's nothing that's completely free or easy, but we will find ways to propel us even more. And there are a whole lot of words that came out today, and one of the key ones that we needed to put in there is respect. I think the moment there's respect, it elevates the level of the discussion, the level of our interaction, and so many other things. And I think, much like KG had spoken, and a few others, when that respect is not there, or maybe you were raised without it because your dad didn't respect you enough to acknowledge you as their child, then the respect is gone. So that's a very key side for us. And what we might want to do is play around and create our own words out of a glossary. So this word means apology. This one means, we can do that to try and bring us closer and have something that's authentically us.
Absolutely.
But that being said, thanks so much for your time. Vik, you're on mute there.
No, I was just saying, absolutely. Absolutely, we'll do that.
So this is embryonic. We'll go in any direction we want, but we cannot thank you enough for joining us on a Saturday. Men of value, male or female participants, we really appreciate your time, and all the best. Stay safe.
Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. Have a fantastic weekend. Have a good one. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay,
Take care. Marcus.
There's a lot here in the chat, Vik.
Yeah, is there? Geez, yeah, I can imagine. Siswam, I'll give you a call a little later, and we can chat about that young man, if you're still on the line. Cool.
Hey, sister.
You're on mute, my sister.
You're on mute.
I say it's great, but we're already talking to the converted, so you need to go to the unconverted.
No,
That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
We need the converted to help us with the unconverted. So that's
great. Hi, Derek.
How are you? Good. Great seeing you.
In sunny Ilmaris. I'm supposed to be coming back.
Okay.
But I've been giving a hell of a time. Men in the corporate world are terrible. I'm fighting battles, fighting. So that's why you haven't heard from me.
Oh,
okay. No.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not gonna wish you luck.
When are you coming back?
Around.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are crazy. I was booked for the 21st of Feb, but Emirates has stopped flights to SA, and now these guys wanted me to fly out on Sunday. Can you imagine? I haven't even cleared my house. I'm middle of packing, and yeah, they've been nasty. And I think that was one question that Ntombi was asking about. What do you do with racist attitudes, especially if you're a CEO or a senior person in an organization towards an African woman? That is really struggling. It's a struggle, They have no regard for a woman, and they're just doing things that are just really terrible. But anyway, I've got a great support system here, and great friends. They've been hosting, several farewells for me.
Nice.
But I take away from there. Yeah. So I take away from here.
Take that energy, my sister.
Yeah.
Take that energy.
But thanks, great. And I think more needs to be done.
Yeah.
I think we're going to change the mindsets. We're going to change, behavior, for instance. Well, that is key.
Well, Derek used the word respect, and when you came up with that word, I think people don't understand what respect is. So the other day I was explaining to a young girl who doesn't want to. There's an uncle or something, doesn't use the word uncle to be. And I said to her that, the prefixes of names are not associated with the person. They are associated with the regard of that office. So an uncle is an office, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and the regard to the office is what you pay attention to. It's like president. You might not like Trump, but he's President Trump, right?
Thank you.
And he's President Trump because of not Trump, but because of the office of presidency. And the moment you denigrate the office of presidency, you denigrate anybody who comes into it. So you want to hold the office to high esteem and then manage the individuals who may not be performing against the level of that office. And that's respect. So when I respect my sister, or when I respect my mom, there are certain gestures that we've got traditionally that happen around respect. And they do not necessarily define how I feel if you have them with somebody, but they define how the office is.
Exactly.
That's what we've missed as the construct of respect. So when I give something with two hands, it may be to a total stranger, or receive something with two hands. It may be to a total stranger who I don't know, and you may be saying, but why do I have to respect them? Because I don't know them. But you do it because when receiving something, there is respect in the act of bringing out two hands. It's not about the person.
Yes.
So those, when you were talking, Derek, about, unpacking these words so that people understand, and that's what we want to do in the program. We want people to truly unpack the word of what does apologize mean, and why do you apologize? And some people don't know that. And what Alan was saying earlier on about understanding the psychology of your emotional responses to circumstances, situations, words, it's important. Because one of the things I didn't have time to say is that I know I have and you'll understand this one. I found that there's a strong correlation between money and my sense of abandonment. So when I think that I'm dealing with money, I'm actually not dealing with money. I'm dealing with my emotional childhood sense of abandonment, right? So when something around, it might be anything. When we spend too much money, or we're about to buy something that's expensive, and I go, wah! I'm not going wah about the thing. I'm going wah about what the consequence may be around losing money, which is my association with that and abandonment. And it's something that I've had to work on really, really hard. And it's the same thing Alan was saying. So yeah, I mean, taking these words and breaking them out and making people truly understand, it's important.
So I think that's a very, very valid, to unpack all this. Maybe the next Man for Value needs to be tackling that. And you're quite right. It's all these issues that we are not talking about and addressing, that, we take it for granted. And definitely that would be nice to unpack it, just explain. Sometimes, I guess, because we're coming from different backgrounds and different cultures, what one word could mean something to one person means different, a different one. So we need to all be on one page so that to indeed, understand and express ourselves. I mean, now I'm totally sort of what these guys undermine me. They go straight to the sort of the chairperson, and which they're not supposed to do. But I've written my whole report and complaints and everything else. After that, it's up to the member states to take it forward.
It go,
I mean, I've done my best under the circumstances. And I think they've really, really discriminated me as an African woman, and as well as being a woman in the sense in the organization. Now they're all men at the secretariat, no female in the leadership, which means now we're going back.
All those things need to, all those things need to change. As a matter of fact, there needs to be, and that's the thing about courageous conversations. There needs to be one man in that group of men who gets up and says, this is totally unacceptable. The diversity that we have here does not reflect life And I don't understand how 10 men can be making decisions about a 50% population of women and men.
Tell me about it.
So
Tell me about it.
A lot of these things need to, make concrete sense. And yeah, we got work to do. Sorry, Derek?
What, Derek?
No, someone was saying something. I'm saying this is so interesting because, I mean, just don't. I look at you and I say, but you are a seasoned corporate operator. Run businesses. You've been around the world, and yet, if I were to not have your picture, you sound no different from what my wife says or what a lot of female people who don't even look at job availability in corporates anymore are saying. And probably what a first time walk into a corporate environment young female would say. And so I think why this is so frustrating and almost painful is that it has you don't experience it. It's not like you don't improve with experience. The more you experience it, you don't become better at handling it. Yeah. Because it cannot be handled. It cannot be tolerated. It should not be handled. So
we have not held ourselves to account. I mean, the whole bottom line around everything is that men do not hold men to account. We don't. We don't call it as it is. We don't step up.
Definitely not.
How many times have we known boys and men or other men who've had children that they've ignored, right? And we know them and they're our friends, but we've never had a conversation say, hey, when are you going to step up and take responsibility? So we don't hold each other to account. We don't hold each other. The point that you made about joking around certain language words that we use in the offices, in just general conversation, we don't turn around and say that's wrong. You can't say that, right? And you can't say it in jest. Oh, but I'm only joking. Let me tell you when you can joke about this. When the status quo of equality is the same, and both the woman and the man can laugh at your joke, then it's fine, right?
Yeah.
But if the status quo is that the person that you're actually joking about won't find it funny, and you guys find it funny, then it ain't funny.
But see, this is why respect is so important. I mean, I know we're speaking on it, but it's obviously outside the formal thing now. But the reason respect is so important because part of respect is what I'm forced to do, or the stuff you're saying, Vik, where you're saying, well, if you're president, it's honorable president. So already it puts a certain level of respect in the dialogue. But on the flip side of respect, it's there because it has to leave the person who's receiving it, the recipient, with a certain feeling. And a lot of the time, the respect is gone because a person who doesn't respect does not leave you with the feeling that you're supposed to get when you've engaged with them. And a lot of these things happen. I mean,
good point.
Alisa left her job. So there's the psychological side of what we probably in our definition should call the feeling. I've apologized, I've done whatever, I've done this. What is the feeling that I want to leave behind? Because that's a big part. I mean, if you look in Sisnomvu's situation here now, if somebody speaks to her and even apologizes, she may not feel better after receiving that apology than she does now. If it didn't come from the right place, if it wasn't with respect, if it wasn't genuine. So a big part of being a man of value is the very end of it. How will you feel after? So once I've said what I've got to say or done whatever I'm going to do, I walk out. What feeling have I left behind? The measurable.
Absolutely.
But no, this is why be strong. I mean, this is why I'm saying. I mean, you've been through these battles so many times.
Yeah.
This is not like a soldier or martial arts. The more you do it, you don't become more resilient.
You become stronger. But it's amazing, I must say, and I'm truly, truly grateful that I have served this organization as a first African woman. This organization has the hallmarks of Utata Nelson Mandela. I mean, when he's declared in 1995 that there needs to be an Indian Ocean Regional Corporation, he didn't just, you know, take it out of his hat. He must have thought about it deeply. And because now we have what we call 23 member states, including France, for some reason. And I mean, I don't understand why they brought France in, because the Indian Ocean Rim was good, because you have countries like India, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, you know, South Africa, and Mauritius, kind of strong nations. And why we needed a France in this thing, I don't know. Because France is going to mess up, you know. Yeah. So, but anyway, the long and short of it is that I'm really privileged. And then, I mean, I have friends here who have supported me. Even last night, I mean, I've been to like 3 events for my, you know, go away, from starting with a breakfast, lunch, and the tea. And then late at night, it was just a girls' affair, and we were busy. And tomorrow, this evening, I'm going to a birthday party, and tomorrow it's also another breakfast. So I'm like, I'm on a roll. And these guys wanted me out of this place by Sunday and go to Nairobi. Can you imagine? I'm going to fly to Nairobi. I mean, I don't even know this. What if in the middle of it all, the airline, whatever it's called, Kenyan Airlines, is declared liquidated, and I'm stuck in Nairobi? Who's going to take me out of there? No. At least if I go Emirates, even if anything happens to Emirates, they'll get me back home. You'll get So yeah, they'll get me out. But the people who are bullying me are from the Emiratis, you know, the typical, you know, royalties, and you know, who don't have any respect for women. Those are bad news, you know.
It came up so many times today in our discussion, corporates and all these sort of things, and it's like, wow, it's such a big animal that we're trying to deal with here. But if we do it even in these little groups and all take our small steps, they add to millions. Now, guys, I'm gonna have to run, but
yeah, me too.
All the best.
Okay.
My sister, I'm seeing you.
Love you guys. Love you guys.
Love you too. I'm seeing you on.
Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Man of value. Great stuff. Great.
Thank you.